Public CEO Report is a podcast that provides insights about the public sector and public policy for the benefit of decision makers and leaders powering our communities. I'm your host, Ryder Todd Smith, and today we're joined by Mike Balliet, president of CityGreen Consulting, and Matt Balliet. Mike and Matt, welcome to the Public CEO Report.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
This is a first for Tripepi Smith, or I should say for Public CEO, having a father-son team on the podcast. So I like to keep it in the family. It's good to have you both here.
Yes, and it's not a first for us, so we'll be okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mike, I think you've been on before for the podcast. It's great to have you. Matt, this is probably a first time for you, though.
Yeah, first time.
All right. Well, awesome. Let's talk trash, boys. Let's talk trash. So, Mike, you have what's been your calling in life? Tell me about your career experience and what it is you do in the world for those who don't know the Mike Balliet name.
Well, I've been fortunate enough to be a consultant to California municipalities since 1991. So I was around when AB 939 was new, and we had to figure out how in the heck to get by with that legislation, how to incorporate trash haulers as assistants to cities in compliance, kind of the transition from collectors to having to wear a lot of hats. So a lot has changed, a lot of new regulations every year. So, we've evolved. We've been lucky enough to serve one client, City of Costa Mesa, since 1992. So we've been through the full gamut with one city. And I think that gives us a very good track record of seeing programs mature, fine-tuning them, and we've been at it and continue to be at it and developing new things as we go along.
And I guess to be clear about that point, broadly speaking, you are one of the trash kings in California in terms of consulting work and understanding the space and the legislative impacts and how we've been trying to manage our waste streams in the state of California for a long time. And you mentioned Costa Mesa specifically, not because it's your only client, it's just the one that you've had the pleasure of working with for 40 years now, roughly.
Yeah, Costa Mesa is a great city. Fondness in my heart. I played on the state championship baseball team for Orange Coast College out of Costa Mesa, and lucky enough to 12 years later get them as a client for my newly started consulting practice, and have stayed since.
Awesome. And about how many cities have you had the pleasure to work with throughout California over the years?
Oh, gosh. I think well over 30 in California, maybe approaching 40 and over 50 nationwide. I've done some work in Nevada, Texas, Georgia, and Florida as well.
So you also have perspective, not just on how we do trash here in California, but how other states do their trash too.
Exactly. Yeah, there's some similarities, but also some differences. And, out of state, most cities that I've worked with own their own landfill. A lot do their own hauling. And that used to be the case in California when I started, but it's pretty rare nowadays.
Yeah, I'd be curious, like how many cities in California actually still have their own waste hauling? I could think of only one right now that last I knew did their own waste hauling. But
well, one of our clients, City of Claremont, does their own hauling and do
really?
a great job of it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
But it's rare.
It is rare. Well, not to exclude you, Matt, but you're the you're next gen on this, so the son in the mix. And tell me about how you ended up roped into the waste hauling trash sector.
Yeah, next gen. I like that. I'm gonna have to steal that. Well, a little bit of a different timeline. I think my dad mentioned starting in 1991, which happens to be the year I was born. So a little bit different, but I have worked with the company for a total of 7 years now. So I started working when we were Michael Balliet Consulting, pretty much right out of college. Did about 4 or 5 years as a consultant for the company. They're great years. I ended up taking a bit of a sabbatical from the company over to Nashville, lived there for a few years and was working in digital marketing, almost 4 years, and then came back almost a couple of years ago now with this new software we're working on, which I know we're primed to talk about. It was an exciting time to get back involved, be closer to family and all that. So I gained a really good foundational knowledge of AB 1826 and AB 341 in my prior stint, and with SB 1383, I've learned a ton even past that in the past couple of years. So,
yeah, well, it is a very complex and interesting, if not often avoided subject for a lot of folks. I mean, the average cocktail conversation doesn't revolve around waste hauling, but the reality is it is a pretty significant policy area, pretty important outcome for having 40 million people in California. And it's important that we at least have some semblance of this, because this has both near-term and long-term impacts in our environment and our society at large. So it's also great to have young professionals entering this sector. And I'm sure, for Mike, seeing some new blood come in is always going to be critical for him too, because either way, trash is getting hauled. So you need some experts out there that are going to make that happen. So I'm glad you're in the fray, Matt. Mike, you've been at this since 1991, as you mentioned, the year your son was born. That was a nice reminder for him, Matt.
Every day.
This could turn into a 30-minute response. So let's not let it go 30 minutes. But what's changed in the industry, right? Like where have we gone in the last 45 years or 35 years? Excuse me.
I view SB 1383 as mandatory organization. It's really nothing new, but the state said, okay, here's how we want you to track what, frankly, you should have been doing. You should be monitoring your haulers. You should be monitoring your customers, making sure everybody, is doing what the state regulations allow. Now, again, I like the flexibility of AB 939, where the city could kind of choose programmatically a bit more than SB 1383 allows. But I think it's more of a clarification. I think the state is clarifying, working towards, this is our ultimate goal, and here's how we're all going to get there. And so it's getting simpler, even though it seems more complicated. Everybody's following the same playbook now.
And would you say in general, as time goes by, though, the regulatory environment around these streams has changed?
Well, again, we started when we were just trying to get businesses recycling, working with recyclers to develop mixed paper programs, things that would make it easier. Our focus then was more on cost savings. I got to work and manage my alma mater, UCI's trash, to help them save money. So again, now everybody's kind of familiar with recycling, but we're adding a new twist with the food waste and with edible food donations. So it's, again, kind of the same thing we did back in the early 90s, educating people. Here's the problem. Here's the solution. Now let's right size it for your business.
Right. Why the transition? So you've been known as Michael Balliet Consulting. You've been in this space for a long time, right? And now
several reasons. First, my wife said that's a horrible name for. Second, we are trying to grow. I mean, we've been a word of mouth company for years and years. We've been very lucky to have loyal clients and people that like us and tell other people about us. But again, the other reason was our software is called CityGreen Connect, and we kind of wanted to associate the consulting practice with it. So CityGreen Consulting seemed like a good name. And again, we've got multiple people working for us. They're not all Michael Balliet. So, time for a change.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, so congratulations on the name change and the software launch. That's very exciting. I mean, mashing up software with intellect and people is a winning 1-2 punch combination. I've seen it in multiple other consulting firms. West Coast Arborist does a good job of having incredible software that goes to power their crews out in the field doing tree trimming work in California. It's really shocking when you see the level of detail that they have in their IT systems. Very impressive, very sophisticated. HDL Company is another example of a local government consulting firm that has some incredible software tools. And frankly, software development is a core asset for them and their competitive advantage in the marketplace for what they do. So this model has been proven, and it can be very helpful. I'm curious, Matt, what's your observations as you see the transition into software from from a consulting based business. How's that strike you? And what have been your observations or takeaways from that transition?
Yeah, well, first I'd say it's a really exciting time for me, at least. I think we're discovering through this first batch of cities we're working with all the ways we can make things more efficient. SB 1383 poses a lot of it's a big increase in the amount of manpower and workload that cities are having to take on. So, like, the natural solution is to see how we can make things more efficient. And it's really tying in all the stakeholders into one place is a key aspect of it, and just making things more clear and providing guidance and more efficient for cities. I think a lot of cities are interested in taking on as much of the aspects of 1383 as they can on their own. So being able to distill all the knowledge that we've gained over 35 years in the industry into a tool is, I think, really powerful and really empowers jurisdictions to handle these things.
Mm-hmm. And I think, to be clear, for our audience's benefit, there's a lot more to waste stream management than 1383. I mean, obviously, that's the definition around reporting out and handling new organics recycling requirements or general recycling requirements and reporting. But you guys do more than just 1383 adjacent work, right? So maybe, Matt, you could walk me through a couple of the other things you do, because I think you do, last I knew anyways, you did audits of contracts and things like that. So what are you guys into broadly with the consulting group? And then we can go back to the software.
Yeah, the consulting, we cover pretty much the whole gamut. RFPs, audits, general consulting, assistance in all aspects. And you're right. It's a great point. Thank you for saying that for me. The software does do much more than just the SB 1383 side of it. It's hauler reporting, hauler compliance management. There's a whole wide array. Maybe, Mike, you could give the full itemized list of all we do.
Well, again, I've been lucky to be doing this for a long time. So I've gotten the opportunity to audit haulers, audit their facilities, audit landfills in multiple states, dealt with various regulations, been around when we had to take a plan and develop a program and actually go out and implement it. So again, we do edible food recovery programs now. We do business technical assistance. We're doing an RFP process for the city of Fullerton right now. We do about one of those a year. We also have done household hazardous waste events. You name it, in solid and hazardous waste, we've probably done it. So what we're trying to do is take how we look at records, because haulers have innumerable records and great systems for gathering it. But what's important for the city to know? What's important for the city to be able to package up and give in a report to the state? That's what we're trying to do with our software, is take the guesswork out of it. What we're also trying to do is get rid of emails with reports. It's only a slight improvement over getting it in the regular mail. Plus, most of us are busy. We get 75 emails a day, so we don't take those reports out. And then it's a month later, and it's like, where's my report from my hauler? We automate that process. They enter it online. It's in a database. You can sort it. You can gather, like I said, the important information when you need it, and it's always available. So that's a long answer to a short question.
Why do waste haulers have to have all this information?
Well, they have to monitor what they're doing. And again, like I said, starting in the early 90s with AB 939, haulers were told, hey, you need to help us comply with state regulations. So they've staffed up to be able to do that. And they have all the reports to track what they're doing, but also to generate information for cities. And I think you can get buried in piles of reports. That's what we try to help cities avoid. What's the important information that they have? And let's get it in a format we need. For example, everybody gets tonnage reports to know, hey, how much are we keeping out of the landfill, which is great. But it's very important nowadays to know what facilities your waste is going to. First of all, the state, implemented this new RDRS program. It used to be DRS, disposal reporting system. Well, now the state's involved with recycling facilities as well. But what I've seen in the last few years is it's spitting out some numbers, especially for landfill disposal, that I think are problematic. And so when it comes annual report time and you get that DRS report, RDRS report that says, hey, you have 12,000 more tons at the landfill than you thought you did, you don't have any records handily available to say, no, these are my facilities. So again, those are things we build into our reporting automatically so you know where every scrap of your waste is going. Plus, SB 1383 makes it a requirement for cities to monitor all the facilities every collector in their jurisdiction goes to. So things like that you wouldn't think are important, but in practice over the years, we've seen, oh no, they're very important. And any quality reporting system should gather that data.
I'm sure this isn't the sexiest policy area, but it matters. Not only does it matter, my recollection is this is the waste hauler contract for the vast majority of the cities that contract for these waste hauling services. This is a huge contract, right? It is a big expense line item in their budget. And so, partly I just raised that point for anybody who's listening to this podcast. Like, this is usually the third or fourth largest contract your city may have, if not a top two, if you have an in-house police department and fire department. If you're contracting for fire and police, this might be number 3 for you in terms of actual contract size for a third-party provider. And if you think about it, these waste haulers are going up and down your streets all day long doing waste hauling work. So arguably they're putting more miles on the streets than perhaps your police department is, just with the sheer amount of the fact that they have to drive every single street 3 times a week because they're picking up 3 different trash bins, theoretically. So all of which I just make the point of, like, this data matters. This stuff feeds into a big system. It's a huge contract. And this is often an area that, because it's not sexy, it doesn't always get the attention, but it is pretty real and pretty significant, either to the financial circumstances of the city, that franchise fee that's paid to the city that generates revenues, or just the overall, say, street impacts and policy impacts or customer service impacts that cities might experience from their waste hauler. Anything you would agree or disagree with, gentlemen, that I just noted on that front?
I agree 100%. It's tens of millions of dollars. It impacts everybody in your city, both resident and business. And, it's the kind of thing that is out of sight, out of mind. But, for example, when you do go through an RFP process and council is engaged on who are we going to select and go forward, it really ramps up and it does become important, but most of those agreements are 10 years or longer. So, people forget, but the state does not forget. Every year you got to tell them what you're doing and do your reports. And so that's what we get to help people with. And so it's been a great business to be involved in, never a dull moment. But I really think the future is automating as much of that as possible, helping cities keep that knowledge base when they have turnover in personnel and be able to execute those important solid waste system management functions with the aid of technology.
Yeah. I would observe, like mentioning of your involvement in RFP processes, many wise city managers I speak with will say that the waste hauler RFP process is perhaps one of the most politically fraught for them as city managers, and bringing in a third-party consultant to take the arrows and deal with the complexities is, and I don't say, whatever consultant that may be, you gentlemen or somebody else, is probably one of the smartest moves they ever did, because otherwise it's a very risky proposition, is my observation.
It's a tough process, and that's why we do one a year. I couldn't live through 2 or 3.
So it's by your choice.
There's a lot of slings and arrows with it. It is, it's tough to pick. There's a lot of really good haulers out there, and a lot of people, have their A game on, and I know most of the haulers, so I wish I could select all of them, but that's not reality. So finding what's the best match for that particular city is difficult. That's why they don't renew these contracts every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I can't imagine if you were redoing it every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
California is, as they sometimes say, as California goes, so goes America eventually, whether it's 2 years or 10 years later. I'm curious, where do you see the waste industry heading in the next decade? Maybe from a California perspective, and then for my friends outside California that listen to this podcast, what are they going to be experiencing 5 or 10 years from now after California does it?
Boy, that's a hot button question, Ryder.
I try.
I think politics and the environment are intermingled a bit. So I think a lot nationwide would depend upon the direction politically we go. I tend to try to keep it simple. It's better to divert these materials for higher and better uses. So, keep the politics out of it. But, I think California, Washington, and Oregon are going to lead the way. I don't know if the rest of the country is going to get as far. But I think there are parts of the country that definitely need to up their recycling game. Landfills aren't the best use of those natural resources. And so I think it'll progress. We tend to shoot way out ahead, and whether everyone catches up with us or not is anybody's guess.
Did you, Matt, see a lot of recycling going on in Tennessee and Nashville when you were out that way, or were they still doing incineration bins on the corners?
Yeah, no, somewhere in between. Nashville's a pretty hip town for Tennessee for sure. So they're doing it. The legislative side certainly isn't to the degree that California is, but they're doing an okay job out there. Yeah,
not as regulated.
Not as regulated.
With all good jest to friends in Tennessee, it's a beautiful state. I love visiting Tennessee.
Agreed.
But I guess let me just challenge one paradigm here, or one thought, which is, from my perspective, I keep reading about how much is actually getting recycled and what is that recycling policy really meaning. So at the risk of throwing a grenade on this entire conversation, what is the scoop there? Like, are we actually recycling anymore, or did Malaysia and China and other Vietnam all say, you know what, you guys can go ahead and keep your stuff, and it's all just ending up in the landfill anyways?
Well, you're going to get me in trouble. I will probably have to retire. But I think in our zeal for perfection, sometimes there's unintended consequences. So there was a lot of issue with pollution and things coming from paper mills and various recyclers. And so it was very easy to say, let's just transition that overseas to the Pacific Rim. But then, partly through our fault, we were sending over containers with paper on the outside and trash on the inside. There were some abuses, and they said, that's it. Green fence, green sword, get your act together. The reality is we need recyclers close by for markets to make sense. If you have to ship something 3,000-4,000 miles away to get it turned into a new product, it's not going to have much value when you put it at the back of your business for somebody to pick up. So I think it's a good development, even though it's a little bit painful. I don't know if the mixed paper market and the mixed plastic markets are ever going to recover to where they were. But again, I think, in trying to solve the problem of pollution, we got rid of a lot of the capacity that we needed to solve the problem of keeping materials out of the landfill. And hopefully we're righting the ship in that regard.
Yeah. Matt, you got any thoughts about that? Or any observations from your perspective, being fresher in the industry, or your readings you've done? I'm sure at night you lay in bed and read about the waste hauling stream. So I'm just curious.
I don't think I can offer anything better than Mike. I'd love to give you more. I'm just so zoned in on this software right now. I'm not keeping up with the global markets at this point. But
fair enough. Well, I always like to try to get global whenever I can. Look at some of the policy implications, Mike. I appreciate your indulging me in that query around how much are we actually recycling and some of the policy choices that we made. And ultimately, I do think there were some unintended consequences. Doesn't mean we can't figure it out. Like Lord knows, this is not the first time we've had unintended policy consequences, but it would be nice to at least harness some of the lessons from those and make sure we don't repeat them as we go about developing policy in the future. Tell me a little bit more about CityGreen Connect. So, and Matt, why don't we start with you? Like,
sure.
What's you said the software brings it all together. It does 1383 reporting and more. I mean, it's starting to sound like it's the panacea for all reporting and solutions in the local gov space when it comes to recycling and waste hauler management. Why don't you give me the scoop on that?
Sure. Yeah. Panacea is a strong word, but as close as we can get, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. So the idea is we call it a total solid waste management system. So the goal is to really bring everything a city does involving solid waste into one platform that's usable for all stakeholders, whether that be city staff, their vendors like us, their haulers, all together, and folks from different departments. So it really covers a lot of ground. And one of my biggest challenges with presenting this thing is being brief enough so that so as to meet whatever time restrictions I'm in. But it covers a wider range. So of course there's the hauler reporting side, which ends up generating reports that are really useful for cities. There's our whole implementation record module, with the implementation record for SB 1383 being so vast. It covers it top to bottom with regulatory references and tons of guidance, and the ability for file management to be kept all in one place. We also have tools and trackers for all the other little pieces, such as procurement goals. Jurisdictions have a procurement target they're required to meet for recycled organic content. So we have a tool for that. We have a tool for your waivers for SB 1383. It really covers a broad scope of things. So the goal is really to cover all the important pieces, of course, for SB 1383, but kind of a wider lens, everything solid waste.
And who ultimately are the users of this software system?
Yeah, so city staff, of course, public works departments. We love to get in a limited capacity, folks from other departments involved. So, like, for instance, there's enforcement processes for non-compliant businesses. You might have to go through a notice of violation process. So we're able to pull in folks from code enforcement to work in part of the system, grant limited access in that capacity. When it comes time for CalRecycle JACE reviews, we grant access to those folks so they can review implementation records in a way that makes sense to them as they're checking their boxes. Like I said, vendors as well, like us, or if the city has another consultant, we provide access to them. Haulers have their own access. The list goes on. So,
yeah, and I would just add procurement's a big one, because most cities are decentralized now in their paper procurement, which SB 1383 requires you to track. And I think what's nice about our software is there's no limit to the number of users. You could have people from each department authorized to go into the procurement record and just put their paper purchases when they do it. SB 1383 requires one designated point of data, also one designated person to be responsible to collect all that procurement information. So it's not just compost and mulch, it's bathroom products, it's the paper that goes in your computer. All of those things have to be tracked, and this really makes it simple, and you can delegate, keep your, far-flung purchasing, just have them put their stuff in when they do it, and it all gets put together by our system for reporting.
The primary users are city governments, right? Cities and counties. This is not used by special districts or school districts for their.
Well, a couple of special districts are used, Costa Mesa Sanitary District and Midway City Sanitary.
You're right. You're right. I forgot about the fact that, and I should know, Costa
They're
Mesa
local governments. They don't have quite as many responsibilities as a city would, but they do have them, and so they've found the tool helpful.
Okay, but your typical sanitary sewer district or water district isn't going to be using this particular tool. It's going to be limited to those that are somehow involved in the waste space,
and waste collection,
and the purchasing tracking for using, say, recycled paper materials is a requirement of cities and counties, but not necessarily of a water district. Is that the case?
Well, they don't have to meet the organic material procurement goal. So it's basically 0.8 tons per person per year that you have to buy of compost, mulch, or energy heating from recycled organic material. So the special districts don't have to do that. As far as the paper, I'm supposed to be an expert on that. I think they have to do that along with the cities. but don't quote me on it. And I'll probably get a bunch of emails from people after this saying, well, of course they have to, Mike, or of course they don't have to. So
This is why you have to hire a consultant who's got 35 years of experience in the industry, so you can tap them as appropriate.
I think the key to 35 years is when you don't know, admit it and go find out.
I'm a fan of that. I've learned long ago, and I've been married long enough to know it's always best to just admit you don't know what the heck you're talking about and move on as fast as possible. And these days now, the answer is as simple as try to pick up the phone and AI that sucker, and then hope you're got an 80% chance you're right.
Exactly.
But let me go back to a point around that. So how do you take and distill down these decades of experience you have into the CityGreen Connect platform? How does that manifest in the user experience for folks? Mike, I'll start with you on that.
Well, again, I treat it as a tool, and what would I want in a tool? What would I want the tool to give me? And we started there. And then we were lucky enough to have a number of long-term clients that got on board with us fairly early in the development. And it's like, sometimes my wife tells me what I think makes sense doesn't make sense to other people. So we got that little back and forth beta testing to make sure all the tools do what they're supposed to do. But again, this stuff seems normal to me because I've been doing it for 35 years. This is, how I do it. But luckily for me, not everybody spends all their time dealing with this stuff. So they think, wow, this is very creative and really good. And I get to feel like I'm somewhat special. But, it's just hours and hours of doing something develops, I think, a unique way of looking at things. And we try to replicate that in a software platform.
Well, first of all, Mike, I just want to assure my audience that regardless of your waste hauler expertise, you're still special.
Thank you, Ryder.
Second, Matt, as somebody who's more junior in the industry, what's your take on kind of how this takes Mike's brain and packages it into some software to make it available to, the fresh public works management analyst that gets thrown the software by the public works director and says, hey, keep track of our trash, would you?
Yeah. So it's a big part of what we do. And it's a kind of a North Star for us is to maintain that like level of guidance. And so I would say that with each tool, and I'll take a couple as an example to make it more real, we try to distill things down into what's necessary to know and what a jurisdiction might need to report on and prove that they have records of. So, for instance, we have an inspection tracker where you're able to fill out an inspection form using the site. And that inspection form, each field is designed to give you everything we would be asking for on an inspection based off of our experience, based off what's going to be important to you, not only for reporting, but for potentially following up with this business, etc. So we do that with each and every tool. We also have implemented a kind of system of user guides throughout the software. So your dashboard, you're gonna have an icon to pull up a user guide. It's gonna walk you through what everything kind of means, what's important, kind of the steps you need to go through to complete things. So we do that for all of our trackers. If you're trying to add something into the procurement tracker and you're wondering, what do I need to gather? What kind of information do I need to throw into this thing? We have a guide that walks you through step by step. And our clients should feel confident that if they're addressing the fields provided, that they're meeting the minimum requirements without too much extra, but just enough to where the records are going to be good for the long term.
Mm-hmm. So essentially, like even on the most basic level, if the forms have all the right questions on them, the wisdom of the questions that are being asked and the fields being required is distilled from the 35 years of experience that were brought to the table to even imagine that.
100%.
The other piece is actually knowing how to read regulations and pick out the parts that are important. And then also, having Cal Recycle and the Jace folks having gone through our implementation record and reviewed it and throwing their suggestions out. For example, as much as I read regulations, I had missed the point where if somebody sends you a complaint on SB 1383 and they give their name and address, you have to respond back to them with the results of their complaint. So that added us to add a little button on our complaints form to make sure that we checked, yes, we did respond to the complainant, and here's, who, when, and where. Again, a lot of people will miss stuff like that. The other things like having to have an all departments meeting once a year to see how you can increase your procurement of organic waste in the upcoming year. So again, we build stuff like that that's buried in there. Now I caught that one, but Wendy Dunlap with Cal Recycle, hats off to Wendy. She's the one that reminded me about that complainant notification. So again, it takes a village, as they say, and we tried to distill it into one product.
So how long has this product been out in the field? Because you mentioned you've had a subset of customers you've been working with, and I assume you've now gone through a cycle or two of using this software and evolving it too. So has that been the process by which you've had the opportunity to interact with Cal Recycle and others to really vet this software and put it through its paces? Maybe Matt, I'll throw that to you.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, I don't know what our longest, a year and a half, maybe.
Mesa is the first, and it's a couple years in April. So, it's Rome wasn't built in a day. And I like Walt Disney's philosophy that it will never be complete because, again, what was bright, shiny, new, and the best 3 years ago isn't today. Technology is always evolving. So we're rolling out, mapping, mobile apps, different things with it. The future is very exciting with it. But, again, we have a complete, very effective product at this point that, took a couple of years to get it ready to roll. So,
yeah, well, being in the field with software, improving its use, particularly in a highly regulated environment, is important. And obviously, regulations constantly change. So if you're having to adapt the software to deal with regulatory changes, that's also just another important distinction and difference, I suspect.
Yeah, and we've had the opportunity to just adapt it to our clients' processes. Like even in a year and a half, we've gone through so many different aspects of solid waste management. We've had complete, notice and enforcement operations with city code enforcement that taught us a lot. We've had a few sort of voluntary Cal Recycle reviews of our implementation record for some of our clients, which thankfully went really well and we got really good feedback on. So we're learning a little bit every day. And definitely, like Mike said, it's really excited. I think the product roadmap, I love to think about because there's so many exciting things I want to do. It's a little overwhelming, to be honest, but in a good way.
It's good to be enthusiastic about the future and to see a pathway forward for more and more features. I am. What's the at a high level? What's the kind of subscription model economics, and how do those economics tie in with the consulting services that might go along with that? Right. So I would imagine just like throw down a credit card, sign up like you're getting a Hinge account, which, Mike, I realize you and I haven't participated in such a thing in quite some time. Matt probably hasn't either because he has a lovely girlfriend. But what is that? What is, you don't really start there, right? You have to actually go out and what does it take to get rolling with the software? What's the subscription model look like? How do they tap consults? Maybe Matt, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah. So the subscription model, we try to tie a few things into it. One of the big lifts early on with the subscription is getting everyone's records in. So, we have a small process for like a one-time startup sort of fee, I guess you would say. And then subscription, we're still kind of nailing that down, to be honest. Mike, where have we landed on this?
Well, we pride ourselves in not gouging folks. One of the reasons we've had clients for over 30 years is we do a good job for a reasonable price. So that's the guiding thing for the software. So again, the setup also includes a lot of documents that we've created, policies, written descriptions that the regulations require. It includes those draft versions that we have to help the cities personalize. We then have to get their records into the structure that the state wants them. So that setup process takes some time. And the reality is, I think some type of 4 to 6 hour a quarter access to myself, to Matt, to our team to answer whatever comes up. It can be related to the software, but it's not product support. You get that anyway. This is more, hey, I've got a question on this, or can you look at this report? So there's a combination. And again, I think the pricing will be very competitive with everything that's out there, but I don't think everything that's out there does what this does from the direction it does. It'll track customers, or it'll track creating some numbers, but ours is more a holistic, here's how you manage your system. And oh, by the way, generate all these things that the state wants. But like I said early on, what SB 1383 really did is clarify what I think folks kind of had to do all along. It's just very specific and has some regulatory language around it, but it's just good system management. And that's what we pride ourselves in doing. And,
Yeah.
we're there for the people that subscribe with us.
Yeah, and to sort of clarify on the model there, we do an annual subscription. There is some variance depending on sort of city size, data size, the specifics to each jurisdiction. But with that, we do, like Mike said, provide a lot of stuff that we think is really valuable, like those program descriptions. We provide unlimited users for every jurisdiction, so there's no limitations or additional costs there. Training, we have no real limitations on, whether that be haulers or city staff. We provide that. And we also try to provide a set of consulting hours, based on, negotiations, what that might be. But we want to provide additional guidance. And we're there, for monthly meetings to check in on the software, make sure everyone's happy, and things like that. So
it sounds like the nature of the customer support is, as Mike alluded, this isn't just tech support for the software and how to use the software, but it actually could be a discussion about the latest cow recycle regulation and how that's being deployed in the software, how they might want to consider adapting it appropriately or being responsive. So it kind of gives them a phone a friend option, combined with having the day-to-day access to the resources and the reporting capabilities that they need.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, I just squeaked my chair, and I was warned to have a noisy chair, but
it's okay, Mike. I think we talked over it. So
what we're trying to do is provide enough support that a city person that really wants to run this on their own can, and they do get, I like that, phone a friend. They've got somebody they can turn to for a certain number of hours every quarter. But also, I think it's important to know that this is something other consultants can use, haulers can use to help the city. We're not looking to be everything to everybody. We're looking to have an everyman's tool that can be, useful to cities all over the place where we can't be. But if we can give a little piece of our time to them to make it work better, I think that's what we're building into our pricing mode. And again, for small cities that don't have big budgets to handle regulations that are unfunded mandates, this is something that, a shade under 20,000 is probably the pricing we'll arrive at. For medium-sized cities, I think you're probably closer to high 20s eventually, and multiple hauler cities as well. And the big cities, maybe a bit north of 30. But I think that's fairly consistent with the market. Again, we're more interested in getting the software out in people's hands than on making a specific margin on it. So we do deals for people. It's a learning experience for us, getting to see that city and what they're doing. And I think once they experience the software, it's very hard for them to switch off of it. I think it's sticky because it makes their life easier. And so, if we make a little less per unit on that, that's not a big deal. I think it works out in the long run.
Sure. A couple things. First of all, I'm your comment about it's very sticky or it's hard to get rid of. I assume your comment there is more about the fact that it's because it's so compelling. It's not really something you want to get rid of because it works very well. But ultimately, you're not like forever married to the software if you decide you want to go somewhere else, right? You have a way to export data, I presume.
Yeah, well, we make the files, and that's something that we let people know up front. All of the organization, all of the documents that we create for you, they're yours. And if you want them back in an organized file structure to go put wherever you want, you get that at the end of your subscription. It's easier to work on. It's easier to get your reports from your haulers. You can have your other consultants, your edible food recovery consultant. You can have all your contractor self-haulers. Everybody can have access and report. So it makes your life easier, and it also stores your knowledge base in one section where if, your recycling coordinator position is one that's difficult to keep somebody in long-term because they move up the ladder or they go to another city, you have a consistent knowledge base in our software for the next person that comes along. So
yeah, I think that's an unappreciated value of having a good, consistent, and I say this a little bit biased, obviously, with the work I do at Tripepi Smith, but having a consistent supplier vendor partner who's doing the work for your agency, so that even if your internal staff move on to the next thing, there's at least a dial tone of resource there that's helping you transition to the next and be supportive of them, really makes navigating those staffing changes much easier. Because for some of our clients, if their comms person leaves, that's their only comms person they have, for example. And so when the new one shows up, we're diving in speedily to help them be thrilled with Tripepi Smith and thrilled with the work we're doing. And in the interim, we're busting our butts to try to make sure everything works great and the client's happy, so they don't have to worry about the impact of that 3 to 6 month transition that goes on. So I could certainly see software combined with consulting in your space adding the same value, particularly when regulatory wise, like that clock doesn't stop. The things must go on. The reports must happen. These things have to happen. If they don't, I presume there's fines and penalties and other problems that are going to start erupting for an agency if they aren't compliant.
Yeah. Ultimately, $10,000 per day, although I don't think the state's waiting with their hammer to come down on you with that. But they can definitely fine you if you're not doing what you're supposed to do. So,
yeah. You have historically kind of used a word of mouth approach with a focused client list, but how is this allowing you to kind of scale the service with the same level of incredible, or scale the software with the same level of support to the broader market? Is that just you got enough people to make that happen? The software is all about scale capability. How are you looking at that, Matt?
Yeah, well, I think the software allows everybody to do more with less time. So, that doesn't stop with the jurisdiction. Like in the jurisdictions we're using it for our consulting practice on, it's allowing us to handle more things, be more organized, and be more efficient. So there's inherent scalability in that. But we are a growing team, so it will scale in multiple ways.
All right.
Yeah, and we have great developers, great software engineer, great team of consultants. I've been very lucky to attract good people throughout my life. My wife, there's example A, but the people I work with, the clients I have, and like I said, with the little cliche village remark, that's really my experience with this software coming together. The lead developer we have was actually with a different company that I was negotiating back and forth with, and kind of said, boy, let me help you. I can show you this, that, and the other. And eventually I brought him on over, and,
shout out to Wesley.
Yeah. Hey, Wes. And then, our software engineer turned out to have done stuff with governments and is just, brilliant. And, I was asking around saying, boy, I really need somebody to roadmap this. And so I talked to a friend who, is like, well, that's what my wife does. So we've gotten some help along the way to have a great team. And again, for the first time, we're going to try to take our show on the road and and provide a little bit of help to a lot of people as opposed to a lot of help to a little people. And,
well, I can vouch for the quality of the people that are around you, Mike, because in one way or another, I've managed to put money in the pockets of 3 of your children, and also your daughter-in-law. So I've done my fair share for the rockstar crew that is the broader Balliet family tree.
Much appreciated.
Okay, so Matt, this space, like either I'm sure you're smart enough not to mention other competitors, but this is a competitive space. There are other entities that have operated in here. How is the product different from your perspective?
Yeah, well, there's certainly other entities, and we're not taking a magnifying glass to what everyone else is doing, though we do, have a general idea. I think our deep expertise, especially with Mike guiding the much of the creation of this, is a real aspect. We're real people in the industry. We're not just software people. And in today's world, as you know, Ryder, with Tripepi Smith and all you're doing, like, it's more accessible and easier than ever to create tools. Anyone can create this thing. So I think the people you work with are vital, and we really care about all our clients, and we really care about making their lives easier, and we really enjoy doing it, all of us. So I think that's huge. And a little bit more concretely, I'd say our focus on guidance in the system is going to be huge. So we really, pride ourselves, like I said, on providing our expertise in a box in a way that someone new at a jurisdiction can hop in and understand what they need to do and what's important and what they need to worry about in what order. So that's my take.
Okay, that's a good hot take. I appreciate that.
Is it a hot take?
Yeah, and then finally, I'll ask, like, you had mentioned that tools constantly evolving. I know the regulatory environment is evolving. What can, without maybe future casting to your competition, but what do you anticipate what to expect in the future for the platform and capabilities?
Well, I have a long laundry list, and again, we're looking at geomapping, using a more visual interface to all the data points, saying, okay, show me where all my edible food generators are, and let me click on them and see their latest inspection reports and things like that functionally don't do anything different than our system already does, but it makes it more visual. It's kind of like when I started using computers, it was amazing when the Macs came along with what you see is what you get, and it's visual. So I think that's one of the directions we're going on pretty quickly. And then getting into grant management, making that simplified, NPDES, building in my hauler auditing mind into a reasonableness test audit when they pay their franchise fees. You can tell, are we on track or do we have an issue? So like I said, there's a lot that we're going to add to it. And I think especially with technology, if you're not growing and constantly improving, you're going to be falling behind. So I'm biased. I think we have the best overall tool now, though some may think theirs is better, but I guarantee you our tool is going to be much better 6 months, 9 months, a year, because we're constantly going to be evolving it, and the folks that are subscribed with us benefit from that as well. So you subscribe to something now that's really good, and then you get a surprise every 6 months. Hey, here's your new map thing. Hey, here's your new field tool. And I think that'll create loyal customers for a long time for us.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. For the record, I didn't mean to say our competitors were bad people, if that's what it sounded like. So just so you know.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're wonderful.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. So, gentlemen, this is CityGreen Consulting. How do people get a hold of you or get in touch with you? Mike, go ahead.
CityGreenConsulting.com has an info email. That's some technology progress I made a few years ago with the name change. I don't know what else, Matt. What do you suggest?
Yeah, CityGreenConsulting.com is the way to go. We got a form there you can fill out, say hi to us, and we'll get back to you quick.
Okay, great. That is perfect, gentlemen. I appreciate both. I appreciate you being my debut father-son team, and I'm glad it's a family business with a great family, the Balliet family.
It's an honor.
With that is today's report. My thanks to Mike and Matt for joining us. From the whole PublicCEO team and myself, Ryder Todd Smith, thank you for your time. We hope you learned something new and inspiring that will help you in your public service. Remember, PublicCEO has a daily newsletter that is free to those who sign up at PublicCEO.com. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of the PublicCEO Report. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing across all of our platforms so you never miss out on this great content. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and Amazon Music.